think what holds the classic car owners back from driving stock cars is just the comparison to what they drive now on a daily basis. When you take a car that's even 10 years old today and compare it to something that's 50 years old, there's just a difference in how well it starts up and the speed that it'll maintain on the freeway and just how it feels on the off ramps. And some people like that mechanical feel and thrive on that part of keeping things very mechanical, and you have to pump it twice and you've got to do those things to make it to achieve the feeling you want. But other people want to have whether it's a little bit closer to what they have now. There's a part where you don't want to get too far from the feel of the Chevelle and the look, but there's a part where we're kind of spoiled nowadays. A Legacy Series Chevelle by Ironworks is our attempt to capture what was good about the Chevelles and what's fun about the Chevelles and put it into something that is comfortable, is reliable, is very powerful, and has a lot of the creature comforts, but we're really trying to define where that edge is of getting too much comfort and not enough raw feel, and trying to decipher what maybe two different clients would want. Some guys want this Chevelle to drive like a brand new Cadillac that you don't feel anything, and other people want to have the brakes a little on the manual side and the steering on the heavier side to where you're actually feeling like you're actually in control and taking inputs from the road as you're becoming one with the machine. The difference between a classic Chevelle and one of these Legacy Series Chevelles is the feeling in the middle, where it's going to give you the driver input that you would have in your new luxury car, but it's going to give you that classic feel with the thumbs up that you're not going to get with the new sports car. The inspiration for Rob Chevelle came from a multitude of kind of sources. The first one being Matt Saxton's timeless 70 Chevelle by the Roadster Shop. Just a simple, basic black, white stripes, keystone wheels, vintage style engine, vintage style everything you could think in a modern interpretation. And then you take probably two other Chevelles that we're pretty known for. One would be Greg's 70 Chevelle that was had a ton of publicity for what it was back in the day. And then you have Andy's 69 Chevelle that Rob had been trying to buy from Andy for a while. So I think those are probably the inspirations, along with just the timelessness of that black Melba toe Chevelle. Rob actually supplied this Chevelle from what I believe is a maintenance or pool guy or something that had it in his garage for 20 or 25 years and probably had big hopes and dreams of doing something with it. And it was a true 70, and Rob had bought the car from that guy and sent it out here. It was in fairly good condition. It had a bunch of shopping cart dings and stuff on the quarters that were hidden in places where the wheel tubs are, and it just became easier to hang two new quarters on it and get some things cleaned up on the car. But overall, the car was very solid. Ironworks has developed a process to build these Legacy Series Chevelles in a timely manner where really the engineering has been figured out. We've come up with ways to recess the seats. We've come up with ways to build the transmission tunnel to accommodate either the 6-speed manual or the 10-speed automatic. And we've developed a system to have a lot of the interior parts on hand, have a lot of that stuff here so that we can speed up that process immensely. And by the repetition of having the cars that we've done before and just knowing what to look for in the cars and creating tools, fixtures, jigs, parts, design pieces, having everything here, we have all the tabs and brackets to mount the gauge cluster in the car and mount the intercooler pump and mount the heat exchanger up front with the AC condenser, and all that stuff has already been figured out. And so we just really can press go and cut those parts and have them produced to go into the car to where we're able to knock these cars out in 6 to 12 months. We want something that when you get in the car, it changes your mind on what a classic car could be. By going to an IRS, you're having an independent rear suspension that are independent of each other. And by having that with custom valve shocks and pieces that have been tuned for these cars, that have been tuned for this weight, all the cars with the LT4s have all been within 40 pounds of each other based on, they all have an LT4. Really the only variable is the transmission of just whether it's a manual or an automatic transmission. And at that point, you can fill up the tank with fuel and change the weight more than the cars vary per each other. Rob had decided to go the route of the LT4 with a little bit more gusto than a stock LT4. And LT4s are a great package for if you're gonna drive the car. They make a lot of low-end torque. When mated with a 10-speed transmission, the transmission just operates seamlessly. Rob had decided to go with the manual as he's more of a driver of the car and has other exotic cars and things like that that he wanted, likes the driving experience. And so we put a Brian Toulig Stage 2 cam in it. We put a little bit larger blower on it with an Edelbrock 2600 and did a few things to go a little bit further but not make it unreliably big horsepower. We're estimating that the horsepower level will be somewhere in the 750 to 800 range. We're not dynoing the engine to produce a physical number, as we just want it to drive well, sound good, and create the overall experience. So Rob Chevelle has our carbon fiber front inner fender wells that we've made and produced to allow it'll probably fit up somewhere about a 305 width front tire on a 19-inch wheel. We go down to a 285, 35 to get a little bit more comfort as a little bit more profile in the front, just so that it takes a little bit of the harshness out of the steering and it doesn't seem to affect the visual look. In doing that, it also doesn't get as wide a tire where it starts to track in the ruts in the highway. Some of those, maybe back east, they have the same thing in the truck lanes where it has the dips, and you can tend to bounce off the dips when the tires get too wide. And so the 285 seems like a good balance in there in the front. And then a 345 in the rear is the tire that we run in the back of the car on a 20-inch wheel. And it just gives us the width we want, because the cars always look better with a little bit wider tire. And I think the cars look a little bit more aggressive with a wider front tire as well. So as we move into the interior, we've redesigned most everything except for the lower section of the dash that we use the plastic dash from the Chevelles. We made our own billet gauge cluster to incorporate a heavier duty headlight switch that is dimmable. We use a different wiper switch that goes with a rain gear wiper system. We have used a Dakota Digital gauge set that goes in there that has a heads-up display if the customer chooses that option. You can physically see it quickly, because sometimes that's important when the law enforcement is on the side of the road. And so it's just nice to have a heads-up display. And we see that stuff in our modern cars and get used to that simplicity. And so at that point, we then made the gauge cluster. We have made the dash pad that is out of carbon, and we recover that part so that it snaps in and comes out quickly. If there's something you need to access under the dash at some point, it's not a huge effort to deal with a different computer box or deal with just all the systems that are in the car under the dash. And so it makes it easy to go in, it's rattle-free, fits with the stock dash and fits over those things, and is upholstered in a nice leather material to match everything else. One of my biggest pet peeves in the interior is just flimsy, cheap feeling parts. And the center console is one of those things that when you're driving down the road, you may rest your leg on it, you may do some of those things as you're going, and the cheap plastic that goes in there just feels like it bows. And so we made the center console under the eyes of using a different material that would be stronger than that, and also made bracketry to solidly mount the center console that is stout to stout brackets that are then welded to the transmission tunnel, just so it alleviates rattles and makes it where it doesn't feel flimsy. One of the biggest high points for the interior would be the seating position that's in these cars. We've accommodated the interior to have GM seats that we've lowered the floor from its stock position about 2¼ inches to where it's just above the chassis. And in doing that, that allows us to have the power seats so that you can have a ton of track forward and backward in the seat for a short driver to a tall driver. We've had guys in there that are 5'4" to guys that are 7 foot tall. And so as we did that, we also made some adjustments to the steering column position on the firewall to move the firewall mount up just so much to bring the steering column down to where when it's straight, it puts it in a nice neutral position where it's not leaned forward and it's more angled straight back to you like it would be in a more performance car. And so it gets you this feeling where you're sitting down in the car and not up over everything. You're not gonna see as much of the hood and those things, but it's gonna give you the feeling of being down in the car in a modern driving position. The door panels and the power windows were a struggle for us because there's a time where the vintage handles have that vintage look. And the vintage handles look really cool until you've got to reach across the car by yourself to roll the window down on that nice sunny day by yourself. And so having the power windows allows you to have that adjustment to where maybe things change. Maybe you decide, maybe there's a phone call. Maybe there's things like that. And so you want to put the windows up or you want them to go down. And so we found that it slicked up the door panels that we made and made things a little simpler to have the power windows as just a standard feature and getting them to work well. The other thing is the door panels were all designed to be, in Rob's car, were all designed to be made from carbon fiber to have a base panel design with design panel inserts that we put in it. So we designed and machined all the trim to be polished and bolted into the panels, had all the panels covered in leather. DJ Designs had done all the upholstery work on the seats and covered the panels in this car. And we took the door panels to make them solid, so they mount the scraper directly to the carbon fiber door panel. They fit the door panel, they fit the door itself well, and they don't rattle. They're not flimsy. If you need to unbolt it to deal with something, you're not worried about clips pulling out. You don't have all these screws showing. It's just a nice piece, and it seems that the material of the carbon seems to dampen some of the road noise that would come from the doors as well. The consensus I've gotten from my clients on these cars is they've turned out to be much more than they ever planned they would be. And they have used the example that if you have the money, you have interest in a classic car, you're gonna have a hard time not pulling the trigger on getting one of these cars based on the level of kind of doing it all. It does everything very well. It drives very well, has a lot of power, has the look, has the stance. It's not overdone to the point where you're scared to use the car, but it's also just very user-friendly. The seating positions and just the inputs that you get when driving the car make you want to drive the car more and more.